Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto truth-seeking orbs high school DxD. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Rifat and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Gray eyes pleaded at the night sky and to the black clouds that slowly traveled along that endless space above. Stars that were millions of years away dimly twinkled in their constellated forms, taunting her with their distance from the situation. To be there, so far away from here and the cruel men that hunted her was a sudden dream that grasped hold of her. The pale moon looked down at her in pity. She was almost tempted to scream at it for help. Using her hand to prevent that desire from spewing forth, she clasped it over her mouth and hid in the darkness of the trees as she heard footsteps, each step timed perfectly, and the sound indicated no rush. It was as if the person was taking a leisurely stroll in the night. The woman could not let them hear her erratic and panicked panting. It could be the last thing she would ever do. Stealth never was her specialty, and her strongest means of offense to escape this peril was a complicated one. Worthlessness, an ability known and feared by those who understand the sheer effect it takes. Also considered a double-edged sword by those who wield it. It could make any sort of attacks that an enemy used to hurl at you completely pointless and erased from existence. However, worthlessness's main power derived from knowledge, and in this case, the devil was in the details of the abilities that one could render to have the fatal capacity of a potato gun. She had seen light bullets, been hit with them several times before, and the light swords that the followers of the creator carried with them. Holy bullets, on the other hand, made from golden crosses, etched with Latin inscriptions of holy ambiguous text, baptized in holy water, and blessed with prayers by the cardinals themselves to eradicate the enemies of their merciful Lord. She did not fancy the chances of being shot with bullets like that, as more than one life was at stake along with her own. She recognized those bullets when her retainers became dust after they received headshots, as her hunters had demonstrated. The bullets would dig in and dissolve in the bloodstream, spreading the righteous disease methodically, slowly, and painfully. If one were to be hit by it in a vital organ, fatality was a common scenario. Only exorcists of higher ranks carried them. Other than them, when things would go awry, the church would send in their faithful militants. Each of those militants was given the standard issue holy bullets, as they were worthy of such weapons. The Iscariot organization, though small in numbers, were infamous for their extreme prejudice against the enemies of their Lord and for carrying out orders that were of sensitive nature. She cursed her luck when she saw the first of their special operatives, the executors, who had been after her. "Have you found her?" said a disembodied voice of an exorcist, his voice burdened with guilt and to an extent shame. The tone of his voice indicated he was tired, she thought as her ears picked up more words. "No, sir," said another voice which seemed annoyed to her conclusion. "You should head back. Yugaki is dead. You saw to it yourself, sir." For a moment, the silence was all that she heard in the park and she did not dare to come out of the darkness that the trees' towering branches and dark clouds provided her. However, rage boiled up in her sins as a devil seeping through despite her fear over the possibility of death. Her wrath commanded her to kill the man who was the superior in ranking. She knew that voice, she knew his thrice damned voice, of the man who had spoken before. How could she not? She had spoken to him before, on 3 separate occasions. He was a friend of her lover, a good friend who was also hunting her, and a small object appeared in her hand. It gave off a dark gray glow as the woman tightly gripped it. A sinister voice inside her head whispered to her, it told her to use the tiny tool in her hand. Her power would increase, of that she had no doubt. Yet reason also danced serenely in the back of her mind, reminding her why she did not fight back and was rather looking to escape. Her skirmish would no doubt attract the attention of the other executors and she would not take that chance. "You have your family waiting for you, Shido-san," the annoyed one said once more. He seemed almost willing for the man to go away so he could continue with the hunt. Executors were like that, she had heard how they were oftentimes considered the black sheep of the church. They saw her and her kind as nothing but a blight upon this world. While they were extreme to a degree, their hatred was held back due to the command the heavenly host ordered them. Though, let it be known that an executor of the Iscariot never shied away from killing creatures that defied the will of their lord. As the words left his mouth, she heard a sigh leaving the man she knew. "I know," the man known as Shido replied after gathering his thoughts in silence. Slowly, her ears picked up the sound of the footsteps and with each passing moment, the noise was going away. She tried to think of ways to get away. She was not exactly battle-ready now. When she had escaped from her household, one bullet had reached her and pierced straight through her flesh. The residue effect of the bullet was doing its magic as she felt pain slowly course through her veins. Blood trickled down slowly along her left shin, and another reason why she entered the park was that she had assumed that the smell of the leaves would overbear her stench. She could fight, but the battle would be drawn out and call for unwanted attention. More executors and exorcists would come after her, and her fate would be good as sealed. Hearing the noise of a gun loading, her senses sharpened as she felt a small, hollow chuckle reverberate through the area. "Heathen," said the man who stayed behind and was calling out to her. "Come out. There's no need for you to hide." He taunted and jeered as she was preparing to fly out of here. Slowly, she allowed the power of the small object to begin. She didn't have much time, and the executor would know soon enough where she was. Subtlety could screw itself for all she cared right now. Though it may seem cowardly, she would have to escape like a lowly devil. Her child had to survive, and she needed to be alive for the baby to born. Slowly unfurling the two leathery wings that had been hidden inside her back, she prepared to take flight and escape this ordeal. All she had to do was make it to the underworld. They would offer her protection. Devils, they may be, but she was one of their own, and then there was her cousin, who was her brother in all but blood, who would no doubt guard her against the evil of men. You may as well die now. After all, even your kind decided to kill you and your child. They did help in killing Yagaki after all, the man said once more as her mind shut down for a moment. No, she thought as her brain thought about what he said. He's lying. He's just doing this too. A child between a devil and a priest heresy. He spat the words as if they were venom, and she contemplated on whether the man was lying or not. A million questions were on her mind as she thought as to why they would. The council, she thought as she finally reached a conclusion in her mind. The council comprised of the four great satans along the wizened devils of Baal, Agares, Visago, Gamagen, Amon, Barbados, and Payman. They found out about her situation and realized how much problems it would cause with the heavenly host. Heresy, as the executor had so aptly put it, had been committed on both sides. Heaven and hell had come to a mutual agreement, and way only was for her and her unborn child to die. They had damned her. They must have. Otherwise, how could the church dare to step on her territory and attack her without expecting any sort of retaliation? She had been betrayed all because she had fallen in love with an exorcist and became pregnant with his child. They had even sent devils to assist in the murder of her lover, the father of her unborn child. Out of despair, the small item in her hand fell. The object was nothing more than the everyday chess piece one would see. It was the king piece, white in all its glory, surrounded by a veil of ethereal gray, and it fell to the ground as the ruffled against the grass was picked up by the executor. Her eyes widened and she realized her blunder. She needed to get away, but she was denied of such a fate. The bullet nearly hit her head as shrapnel of blistered wood came floating across her face, and she flew away from the branch. Her wings fluttered, letting loose a few whirls of wind, and began to pick up more speed, but the noise of gunshot not too far away from her had sealed her fate. One of her wings were shot and she fell from the sky above to the earth below as her body crashed against the ground much harsher than she expected it to. The taste of grass and soil made itself known in her mouth, and carefully she gathered magic in her hand. Using worthlessness now would be pointless, as the bullet had once more cut straight through her frame. Once more she lost the chance to observe the bullet that could kill her, and now she had no option but to fight. However, before she could unleash a portion of her demonic power, she felt pain coalesce through her body. It was a vial of glass, a vial that exploded into smaller shards of sharp and jagged shrapnel that was digging into her body as blood desperately escaped from the pierced skin. An acidic liquid that was previously inside the container covered her body, and by the original Satans, they burned her being to the very core. She saw it was nothing but water. No, it was holy water, as she realized with the anguish she felt and the smoke that burned off her body. She desperately wanted to use the king piece she had lost a few moments ago. She yearned to go towards it and use it to escape, but her mind could not will her frame to do so. "How I pity you heathens," the man said as he got near her and looked at her with a slight glee on his face. Her grey eyes looked at him, and if her gaze did hold a power, he would have been dead under her glare. Seeing her wrath, he had to smile. He was enjoying her despair. "Don't worry. Shidu-san's already taken care of the heretic. At the very least, you should be happy that I'm not going to waste time in making you join with your lover in the dark pit you belong. Along with the abomination you carry inside you." He finished with those words and pointed the black gun at her head. She could tell that she would be dead, and she cried. Not for herself, no, she cried for the man she loved and lost. She cried for the child who had committed no sin, who had not even born yet, and would be killed because of the old status quo. All hope was lost and she would die here. The last thing she would hear would be the sound of chirping birds that were rushing towards her. The sound of the birds and cackled lightning increased to an echoing tone, and she saw the executor turn around. That was his last action before blue sparks of lightning emerged from the back of his chest and blood flew out, painting her face with a shade of red as she watched the man choke, gurgle and shake before finally becoming rigid. The cackled lightning also stopped and she could see a hand, a normal-sized hand sticking out of the executor's back. The red substance painted his arm, serving as proof that he had ended the life of her would-be killer. The hand retracted, and the body of the Iscariot operative fell to the side like a discarded tool. The blood was still flowing out of his chest, what was left of it anyway, and his mouth while his eyes were deathly still. The man who killed the executor was there, and he was starting to make his way towards her. Panic raced through her mind as she felt the man get closer, and her grey eyes saw the feet of the man. He wore tall sandals and saw the pressure around his foot increase as the blades of glass departed, suggesting that he was slowly coming down to her level. "Hi there," said a rather cheerful voice, as she finally dared to look up to see a man whose face's lower half was covered with a black cloth. He had gravity-defying dark silver hair, which tilted towards his left side, and a scar running over the eye below that line. He also had dark grey eyes that looked, oddly enough, kind, yet the deadliness with which this man had killed the executor was gone. "Was it so easy to hide your emotions?" "It's rude not to reply, you know," he added and looked at her as his eyes narrowed a bit. Sighing, he spoke once more. He seemed to be contemplating something as his eyes closed, and she could see he was thinking. Moments later the eyes opened and he spoke to her. "Some other men wearing the same attire as him," the masked man pointed at the dead executor, "are on their way here. Unless you start talking I won't be able to help you." She had no choice but to comply. Either she had to trust the stranger who could kill her now, or take her chances with the executors would undoubtedly kill her when spotted. Swallowing the fear, she spoke at last. "Be very well," the words left her mouth, and it was shaky. She had been through quite an ordeal today. In her mind, a desperate part of her concluded that the man might help her. She was willing to take all the help she could get now. "Good. Now," he said as she looked at him, his appearance changing a bit. Dark grey eyes slowly transforming into a shade of red, menacing and commanding, while three oddly shaped dots formed around the black central iris. His next words left her in surprise. "Now tell me, exactly how you would have died at his hands." Silence. The silence was all that could be heard, it was all that echoed and resonated in the vast endless space of nothingness. Kaleidoscopes of iridescent colors were present in a disheveled and misguided order as they painted the entire realm, not leaving a single spot that was not covered by it. A simple gaze from any onlooker would leave them dazed and confused from the sheer absurdity of it. In the midst of the jumbled array of contradicting colors and echoing silence, earth and structures aimlessly wandered along without a direction and purpose. They seemed akin to large stone golems that struck terror into the hearts of others with their overwhelming size and brutal strength. These creatures would have indeed been that much scarier if they were alive in the first place, instead of being lifeless husks made of stone. Bizarre was the only word that came to mind when describing the ancient and mysterious plane known to all as the dimensional gap. Created by the first ones, whose names have been long since forgotten, this plane of existence is a realm that exists between earth, heaven and underworld. It was a void world where legends were born, and due to the mystical nature of the place, very few beings could survive here without some form of protection. The nothingness of this distorted realm was dangerous to lesser beings, and throughout all this, only the silence could be heard. "This is boring." A yell shattered the peaceful veil of silence that had been previously shrouding the entire realm. Then in the midst of the mixed and confusing colors that shifted with every second, one color stood out more as it covered an entire area without much difficulty. Red, a dark shade of red became visible as it stretched throughout the nothingness of the void world as the being came into view. Scales of red gleamed as a behemoth creature with prime draconic features flew wildly into the endless space, its giant majestic wings flapped letting loose small hurricanes as they faded into the nothingness. His golden eyes seemed bored, annoyed, and at the same time frustrated as his earlier statement had shown. The mighty horn on his snout pierced through the incoming winds, and his maw lined with fangs that could crush steel with relative, let loose a sigh of boredom. "It's been 6 human months," the titanic dragon said as he once more picked up his speed. Twisting and turning through the void world, his large hand traced a hideous scar on his chest. His hypersonic flight halted as the draconic beast thought about the wound that ran from his chest to his stomach, and upon the sudden stop of his flight, great winds akin to twisters raged around him as his momentum affected the very atmosphere. The dragon's mind, however, paid no heed to his surroundings. It had been eons since someone had scarred him in such a manner and made his blood boil with excitement. To be able to fight without restraint and see how far his power went. Other than a certain dragon whom the Red One knew all too well, no one had ever posed such a challenge. Even the beast of the apocalypse, whose strength eclipsed his own, didn't leave this much of a permanent mark when Deus was sealing it away. He had asked both this dragon and the Infinite One, much to his distaste, to fight the beast as he sealed it. The dragon had to admire how Deus willingly gave up his life to seal the being known as 666 away. Too bad the dragon in the gap did not care about the world like him. The red dragon was a free spirit, bored beyond measure all his measure, and looking for a good fight to quench his battle thirst. The last time he enjoyed a fight to an extent was after the event with those toothless worms, as the Red Dragon had called them, known as Apophis and Nidhugger, who had been wreaking havoc in the human world. Another pointless conflict had risen among those worthless creatures, and this time it was a war between the devils themselves. Some civil war between the old devils descended from that brat Hellel and his comrades, and a new group of children had stopped. Surprisingly, the old devils had been dethroned, and these new satans ruled the underworld. Naturally, they would take some time before becoming stable again, and two of the evil dragons had made their moves. Heaven was still recovering, Indra was waging war against Vairachana, and the last of his Asuras, and the 5 great dragon kings, would pose no threat to them. However, as they embarked on their path to spread fear, gain power and eventually enslave the human race, they ran into one problem. One very large, very red problem who was leaving the human world, and Apophis, despite his respectful manner of addressing the dragon and explaining why needed to rule this savage planet to avoid conflict, Nidhugger's greed to prove himself against the red god of a dragon, had proved to be their downfall. He had shown why he was the true dragon, his legendary power had been witnessed that day, and that was the last time the world had seen Great Red, the true red dragon god emperor, as he annihilated 2 evil dragons without much difficulty on his way out. Shortly after, Red made his way to the dimensional gap and found none other than Aphis, the infinite dragon, who left after fighting him for quite a ridiculous amount of time. The dimensional gap resonated with the blows as Great Red and the dragon god fought for what he remembered to be months. It was one of his best memories. Much to his dismay, Aphis left claiming that it wanted its silence back and saw the infinite one, who came back a few times. Verbal spats, cusses and a lot of bickering were exchanged between the two. Despite his best attempts, Aphis would not fight Great Red. "Not now," were the words that the Infinite One constantly repeated to him. For the life of him, he couldn't understand why he just couldn't pent out all his frustrations in a fight. Then he remembered because there were very few beings who could rival him, and no one would go out of their way to break the peace to fight him. Until 6 months ago, when a rip in the dimensional gap appeared and out of that hole 2 people emerged. The first of them was a woman. She was exotic even by Defic standards, the true dragon could admit that, who later turned into a hideous creature. A creature who radiated power that engulfed the entire realm, the pressure of it was unreal, and Great Red smiled like a dragon that day when he felt the overwhelming force of it. The beast was titanic, much larger than him, and had a grotesque bulb-like body with long arms and clawed hands, but no visible hind legs, as well as a wide mouth with multiple rows of pointed teeth and a single spike on its chin. Dark veins similar to those of a plant ran along its body, and the endings of its 10 massive tails resembled leaf buds. Despite its gruesome appearance, which the true dragon knew would make most gods shit their togas when they would feel the beast's power, the most interesting and terrifying feature the beast had was none other than its lone eye. In all his life, since the days when the Ancient Ones roamed this realm, he had never seen such an eye. It had a black pupil in the center, red sclerae and irides, with a ripple pattern spreading over the eyeball, and 9 strange markings he had seen in the land of the rising sun. When the beast had roared, the shockwaves had traveled far along the realm and echoed across the endless void. Great Red without a second thought had rushed in and chose to fight the beast. Even thinking about it now made him shiver with excitement and the fear that crept up on him afterward. Pain was the only thing he received in return. The beast thrashed him around and fired beams of destruction at him. The true dragon had recovered time and time again with the power of his dream embodiment, an ability that even Aphis could not figure out perfectly, and engaged the beast. Each time, Red learned something new, and with each of his attempts the beast, despite wildly flailing around, was also becoming smarter. Their fight was soon beginning to affect the entire realm itself, and Great Red did not care how it would end. However, that was halted when he felt the presence of another. A person who had entered the realm along with the beast and did what the true dragon deemed impossible, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. Ha 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 ha. Great Red's maniacal laughter echoed throughout the dimensional gap as his bones, flesh and scales knitted back together. A horrendous scar rested on his chest and went down further as he realized how the 10-tailed beast had wounded him, and using his dream embodiment, he enhanced his own abilities as he charged his entire frame with that power. Using his wings, the true dragon rushed at a blinding speed and rammed his body into the beast, making it move back and tumble. Seeing his chance, Great Red opened its maws, and white energy began to gather near his jaws. Energy powerful enough to decimate an entire country with ease, blasted at the body of the beast, pushing it back even further away. There were some indications that the beast was injured if the wounds were anything to go by, but seeing the beast close its own set of large wounds made him realize how his foe was eyeing him at the moment. The lone red eye looked at Great Red, and the dragon felt nervous. Then he saw the beast roar once more, and he felt the winds and the shockwave afterwards trying to push him back. It would need a lot more than that to make him nervous, and as if the beast had been listening to his wishes, began to gather energy near its open maw. Large spheres of black, white and a mixed color of energy were being gathered, meshed, and grinded before a large orb, enough to be a small moon, fired a beam of carnage and death at him. Great Red felt the pain of losing limbs, organs melting away and his bones disappearing from the blast. The dragon laid there on the nothingness, his right side demolished and a part of his gone with the previous attack. "So, the dragon of dragons said as he watched a beast roar at the dragon's defiance to die, will you be the one to kill me?" The response he received was a short one as the beast began to gather another large orb of energy. The true dragon needed a bit more time to recover and fight to his heart's content. His wish to fight someone who made him feel the frosty grasp of death had come true, and he would be damned before he went out without a proper fight. He and all his draconic pride had let his arrogance get the better of him. While the true dragon had not used his full power yet as he should have from the start of the fight would no doubt end with a loss for him. He could use the Apocalypse Drive, his ultimate weapon, but his body needed to recover, and by the looks of it, his time had run out. The one-eyed beast had fired its beam of energy, and the dragon braced for the pain, but it never came. The large black void appeared near his downed frame, hovering in midair and was absorbing or rather drawing the attack into itself. Great Red's golden eyes became astonished at what had just happened and heard winds rushing in. A gigantic humanoid being made of ethereal light, blue energy approach and stand near the true dragon as the void disappeared. The large being had a long nose, something the dragon found amusing at the time, plating on its forehead, 2 locks of hair falling on either side of its face, red eyes and a hole in its chin. Clad with robes and ornate armor, the ethereal warrior had 2 majestic wings that jutted out of his back and a sword by its hip. However, when the Apocalypse Dragon looked at the forehead closer, he saw a human. A golden glowing human, he was wearing a jacket of the same shade and black pants. His spiky hair was going upwards, and 3 thick black marks caressed his cheeks. 6 oddly shaped designs rested around his collar along with various other black markings on his body. The boy's eyes however were red, much lighter in contrast to his scales, and had vertical slits across golden horizontal slats. As if that was not bizarre enough, there was a 3 black bladed pinwheel with smaller blades emerging at a lower point extending from that shape. "Thanks for buying me the time, red guy," the teen said, and the true dragon immediately grew annoyed at the boy's words, despite his apparent loss of limbs that was slowly growing back. Dream embodiment could only regenerate so fast after such a devastating damage, and if it were faster, he would have smacked the boy for even referring to him in such a way. Before he could speak, the brat spoke up again, "Don't worry about her. She's not going to live after this." On any other day the dragon of dragons would have scoffed at such a claim, however Great Red despite his predicament grew angry. This brat claimed to destroy the beast, her if his draconic hearing did not betray him, which was rushing at them. "I can't let you do that, brat," the red dragon spoke as his flesh was knitting faster. The boy looked surprised, and Great Red followed through, "That beast is the only thing that's given me a good fight. I'm not letting anything happen to it, and it's not like you can stop I." Great Red, the Apocalypse Dragon, the true dragon whose power remained unrivaled and feared above all creations by all supernatural beings, was intermediately cut off as a fist drove into his nose, and by the ancient gods, it hurt more so because he was already in writhing pain. His golden eyes followed the boy's and saw a storm of fury dancing in his eyes. Unforgiving rage glared at the dragon, threatening to kill him with all the force he had. The boy then looked into the golden eyes of the true red dragon god emperor without fear and spoke with brutal tenacity. The dragon noticed how his eyes were changing, his right eye became violet and ripples similar to the ones of the beast appeared over his eyeballs. A small black pupil was in the center of the iris. "Shut the fuck up, you scaly bastard," the boy yelled, and for the first time in his life, Great Red was shocked at how a human referred to him. "I don't care what you want, sit your ass down or I'll blow you sky high with a juubi. It dies tonight. Boss." A voice similar to the boy's yelled, and once more, the true dragon was shocked. Another copy of the boy arrived, this time the boy was inside a titanic 9-tailed fox with 3 heads and 6 arms. It had the same golden color as the boy, and black markings spread all over the body of the fox. "Kurama's ready." "I know," the boy said, and the dragon followed the boy's momentary gaze, which lingered to the corner. Great Red saw 2 more large golden foxes, the upper half of its body, looking surprisingly humanoid. Only these 2 had 1 head each and 2 arms, both of them were sitting with hands conjoined, as if they were meditating. Then the 2 foxes disappeared in large puffs of smoke, and white lines of energy flowed from the smoke to the giant fox and ethereal warrior. As this happened, the one-eyed beast roared and began to gather large amounts of energy, forming the destructive orb it had previously fired. This one was larger, much larger than the last 2, and it was growing. At the same time, gusts of wind emerged near the 2 beings who stood close to Great Red. The warrior for his part changed in shape a bit as the helmet of the humanoid opened and white energy wildly danced from every corner of its body. It grabbed its sword from waist and raised it high. Great Red felt the power of nothingness around the sword and the ethereal warrior. 9 black pinwheels emerged around the titanic sword, the same design as the boy's eyes. They were orbiting the length of the blade at supersonic speeds. The boy was struggling, he could tell. The nothingness was both matter and antimatter. The fact that the boy was breathing here was astounding feat by itself, but to absorb the power of nothingness and use it as a weapon was next to impossible. Impossible, the dragon thought, but the energy similarly appeared on the other side where the fox stood. He too emitted the power of nothingness the boy had harnessed. The golden fox then put its 6 arms outwards, 3 on each side, as energy similar to the one the beast was capable of conjuring, only they were focusing around already existing black spheres. Then the 2 small spheres became akin to small moons, as one glowed as bright as the sun and the other was dark as the night. Both had white blades spinning around the spheres at blinding speeds, and the noise of it echoed everywhere. Without warning, the beast had launched the ever-expanding small planetoid of energy, and it was rushing in to destroy them. At the same time, the ethereal warrior made a slashing motion with his sword, and a beam of devastating energy launched in the direction of the large sphere. The giant pinwheels were the first to reach the sphere of energy, and Great Red looked with his jaws hanging wide at how the entire sphere of energy was sucked into the pinwheels as if they never existed. "I see, he can create voids in space and time," he concluded, and saw the white beam of energy meet the beast full on, and an explosion of energy similar to his own destructive capability emerged in the distance. The large beam of energy had hit the beast, and the entire realm trembled at the awesome display. The true dragon admired at how much raw power the boy was putting out, but it seemed the boy was far from done. The ethereal warrior then slapped the open palms of his hands together as it glowed bright with energy, and he was not stopping anytime soon. In the midst of the multi-nuclear level explosion that would have destroyed nations by now, the golden fox made its move as the boy threw both of the large bladed spheres. The spheres traveled much faster than he thought and reached the beast's location. This time the explosion was even larger than before, and the true dragon was sure that it must have echoed all the way to heaven and the underworld now. The dimensional gap trembled at the apocalyptic feat being demonstrated here, and the true dragon saw the utter carnage the human had just demonstrated. His mind boggled with what a boy, a human brat, had just done. There was no presence of those accursed prisons that the biblical God made, nor the blessing of Deus or any other god of any pantheon. He was no devil, and despite the energy he felt that similar to Yaokai, it wasn't entirely that either. On top of that, the boy had harnessed and used the power of nothingness, which was slowly fading from him. Great Red assumed he must have absorbed it from the void world itself, and that alone raised more questions. It's still not enough, the boy's voice reached his ears, and true to the words, the beast emerged. However, it was wounded this time unlike the previous occasion. It was bleeding and howling in pain. The attack was no doubt more than enough to destroy god-tier beings, yet the beast was still alive and from the looks of it, slowly regenerating itself. The fox then got up, previously it had been on one knee from fatigue, and flew to the direction of the beast. At the same time, a small buzzing sound appeared near the ethereal warrior. The black sphere launched from the hands of the humanoid giant and the boy flew out of the direction, much faster than the true dragon thought, and saw it rushing to the beast. It made contact, yet there was no damage. Then after exactly a second, tens of hundreds of the giant floating stone golems were rushing at the beast. Despite the violent thrashes the beast made, more large statues came at him, and each of them were scorching red. Soon enough, a planetoid made of the ancient earthen golems completely entrapped the beast and rushed at the planetoid. The golden fox faded, and it was just the boy who stood perfectly still, as he had been for quite some time. 9 designs were on the back of his jacket, along with a circular ripple design near his neck. The brat also seemed to be doing something strange with his hands. Great Red could visibly see how he was pulling in the nothingness into his frame to increase his energy, which surprisingly was working. The planetoid then began to crumble quite quickly as the beast was thrashing away the large golems entrapping him. As soon as it finally broke out of its prison, the blue humanoid titan crashed into the beast at full speed and dazed it for a moment before it disappeared in a large puff of smoke. The boy then slapped his hands together in that moment, similar to the ethereal warrior only making a different symbol with his fingers, and yelled out with all his might, as if it was his last call of hope. Shaikif Jin, dead demon consuming seal. The true dragon then felt true fear when the void became silent and darker as a large black being appeared behind the boy. His face covered by a skull and his entire being clad in black as he put his hand through the boy's back emerging out of his stomach to grab the beast. The boy screamed out of pain and the dragon felt the boy cling on to dear life as he was visibly pulling in the nothingness in the void to power it further. It was suicide. Great Red had realized the boy's intention and fate cruelly chose that moment to complete the apocalypse dragon's regeneration. Immediately he flew closer to see what was happening and disappointment hit him with full force. The beast was disappearing and was sealed into the boy's abdomen, and he saw a silhouette of the woman who was there before she turned into the beast, being warped into the black being. The boy fell on his knees, his golden aura fading as it showed a boy with unruly blonde hair and a tattered orange suit. His eyes were different though, both of them were now like the beast's lone orb, and they looked at the dragon with a defiant smile, before he spoke his last words. "I told you I'd kill it, Dadabeo," was all he could say before he preemptively fell forward, and the hands of the black being held him in the endless space as Great Red looked shocked at what happened. Not only was the boy dying, another person who could give him a fight, but he had taken the beast with him. He felt wrath build up in him, he thought he was finally going to let loose, but the boy denied him. "What's with all the anger, Little Red?" The black being spoke and the true dragon looked at him with disappointment. Great Red knew this being far too well. To his knowledge, 3 beings existed as far as he could remember. The first ones, boundless deities who defied the laws of existence and reality. Life, death and truth. Life, a majestic woman, too pure and beautiful to be seen by the eyes of normal beings. A veil always covered her face, yet the lower half of the exposed face showed a beauty that was unrivaled by all. Death, a black being with supreme powers over the realms of death. None could defy him when the end came. Truth, a small boy who only spoke of what was true and loved to see how one's fate would unravel. These 3 were always there before all of existence according to Great Red's knowledge, and this boy had no doubt summoned death of all beings. "Why are you here, Lord Death?" The dragon spoke. "Simple," the boy called, "and I came. His soul is payment in exchange, I seal the beast inside him. Between that and the little display of chaos that caused me a bit of a headache, the affair seems to be in order," Death said with a blank and mundane tone. "Does he have to die?" The dragon asked and Death looked at him with curious eyes. Great Red would have squirmed under the gaze, but he knew Death was merely gave him an inquisitive stare and must have figured out his intentions. "Everyone has to die at one point," was the swift reply from the Reaper of all. "But does he have to die now? That's the real question, isn't it?" Came another voice, a voice so silky and motherly that both of them saw a woman whose face was covered by a white veil and her body draped in royal robes, too heavenly to describe with mere words fluttered. "You're here as well, my lady?" The true dragon asked and received a curt nod, followed by a small playful laugh. "Yes," the boy caused quite the ruckus, and it's not every day you have beings from other worlds fight in the gap, Life said as she looked at the boy with a kind smile. She then turned her head towards the true dragon and spoke as a mother did to her children, "How have you been, Little Red?" "Bored, and by the looks of things I will die of it." "Look," the apocalypse dragon spoke and looked at them, knowing he was breaking all the rules in every book ever, with the apprehensive request he was about to make, "Can you let the boy live? Please." "For what? Do you even know where he came from? How much trouble his bloody world caused us?" Death asked and there was some annoyance in his tone. "You want me to let him live to sate your beastly urges for a battle?" "It's not just a battle, my lord. I've lost my mojo." Great Red yelled and the present first one stared at him. "Well," Life in all her mercy spoke, "the boy has indeed gone through a great amount of ordeal and did help us in a way. Despite Little Red's childish reason to let him live, the boy's deeds does give him such a merit. Still, that is not enough," Death said in a tone that left very little room for argument, and Great Red knew no matter what he said would help. The embodiment of death then looked at the true dragon and spoke, "You've lost your mojo. That was the best reason you could up with. I am disappointed, Little Red. It seems you haven't grown that much at all." Great Red snorted at the words Death said to him. This was nothing new. The first ones treated him like a child, calling him Little Red at every turn. They treated everyone like a child, and while they were not wrong in the context when they spoke, but he was the damned dragon that was recorded in the apocalypse. He deserved that much respect, and now his only hope of getting a good fight was quickly dying. The boy's skin was growing paler with every second. "Let him live," came the sudden voice of a child, and all 3 beings looked up to see a small boy. His entire frame was gray, and he had no eyes. He did have a small smile on his face. He came down from his suspended motion, reaching a much lower level of height, and looked up at his fellow first ones and the true dragon. He then spoke, opening a book that materialized out of thin air, and started writing on it with a quill. "I want to see what his true destiny is." "Truth, surely you jest. Think of all the consequences," Death said with a surprised tone. "You've seen what his world turned out to be, and letting him live will only start that cycle again." "I assure you I am not jesting, dear brother," Truth said as he looked at them both, raising his face and stopped writing. "Yes, I've also seen what his world became. I would blame us for giving them that power, but the will of men are something we can never control. Besides, this boy is different and we all know that. Not to mention, he still reeks of destiny, and I for one want to see what he does." "I do agree with Truth to an extent," Life said, kind as ever she looked at her brother Death, who seemed to almost groan, and Great Red who was smiling like a child. "This is wrong, he called for me knowing full well that he will die," Death said, and Truth shrugged his shoulders at what he said. "Brother, I don't see what you're so upset for. You already took the soul of one primordial today. Consider it a request I am making," Truth said, and was willfully smiling as he once more began to write something in his book. The Apocalypse Dragon was happy, both Life and Truth were convincing Death to let the boy go. This was playing out well, though a part of him was worried. Truth was genuinely looking forward to what the brat could do, and the last time he was this eager was when hell fell from heaven and the angelic war happened. Not to mention Truth requested Death to let a person live, and that statement alone made the dragon feel a bit wary. Now that he thought about it, all the first ones, the outer beings who answered to no one, had arrived in the dimensional gap. Sure, the boy had made the realm shake with his power, but they had not come down when he and the Infinite One fought a few centuries back. Did the boy represent that much of an imbalance to this world? He was brought out of his musings when Death spoke once more. "Very well then. However, heed my words," Death spoke after releasing a sight as he raised the teenage boy in his hands. "This boy's power is tremendous, and if his personality is still the same, he'll go out of his way to help others. When he does do that, he will cause a ruckus in the entire balance of power, and you three will be responsible for it." "I will, my lord," Great Red said, and Death looked at him while shaking his head. As much as he did not like how Death was a bit disappointed at his childish behavior in their opinion, not his, he had gotten what he wanted. "Don't worry about it," Truth said nearly immediately, as he laughed a bit, "this boy is going to make things very interesting now." "Do you view him like that, Truth? Something that will merely serve as entertainment to you?" Life asked, and the dragon could tell she was joking. Only she and Truth had sense of humor, Death on the other hand didn't. His ability to make a joke was extinct as those dinosaurs he destroyed when they looked at him wrong, and the dragon internally smirked when he had annihilated an entire race. "I'd be lying if I said no," the boy known as Truth spoke, his hand resting on his chin. "But he isn't just entertainment. He'll prove himself to be something far greater." "Well then, hand him over," Life said as she motioned for Death to give the boy over to her and ever so gently took the boy in her palms. Bringing her mouth closer to his frame, she breathed onto his frame and he glowed as his skin began to lose the pale shade of mortality that had been creeping up on him. There, one orange spark ready to be brought in a new world. "I do hope what you're implying turns out to be correct, Truth." "Ah, yes," Truth spoke and everyone looked at him as he raised his pen. "Let's see what you have in store for this world." "Naruto Uzumaki," Great Red muttered as he remembered the name of the boy who not only proved to be capable of hurting this Yubi, but also had the beast sealed inside him. The true dragon happily took him from the hands of Life, Death and Truth to mark him. He marked the boy with his own sigil. The boy's back had a tattoo of a dark red dragon seared into it. The mark not only gave permission to the boy to enter the dimensional gap, but also served as a cloaking device. He knew that Office would soon arrive to see why its self-proclaimed realm had been disturbed so much and no doubt try to make the dragon reveal the truth as to what went done to incite such an event. That dragon was annoyingly persistent and would no doubt look for the boy. Therefore, he marked him with a dream concealment that would hide his energy signature from the Infinite One and other draconic creatures. Great Red had then opened up a portal to the human world and threw him through the void. In his rationale, if the boy could not survive the fall, maybe he was not fit to be his rival. All three first ones looked at him with bland looks when he made that statement and he was forced to do a certain task. Truth had kindly told him to do so, Reed ordered, and Great Red complied to the request. Apparently, it was a bit of payment for accepting his request, and to this day, it was the most embarrassing moment in his life. However, it was nothing he couldn't brush off. He had a rival now, someone who would fight him and make him feel that desperate again. He could use his apocalypse drive, a power only Office had seen and to an extent worried about it. However, it would have to be some time until that. The boy was de-aging, even when Great Red threw the boy into the portal he could see him getting younger and by that logic weaker. He would have grown even smaller if Life did not stop it by a great degree and the boy would need time to get his primal form back. However, Great Red would be patient and it could be years, but he would wait. Harnessing the power of nothingness even for a moment did not come without cost, and the boy had done just that. The consequence of such an act was the boy becoming younger, and once more, had Life not stopped the process, then he would have kept de-aging until he would not exist anymore. "Naruto Uzumaki," the Apocalypse Dragon said with a smile as he traced the scar, "we will fight each other one day, and by the first ones, out battle will make the Great War look like a child's play." "Achoo." A sneeze echoed throughout his entire mind, and 5 pairs of eyes stared at the boy. Some of the large beasts in the open-ended grassy field who were formerly talking to each other looked at the boy who peeved a bit under their scrutinizing gazes, the other 4 were asleep and snoring away with no shame at all on absurdly large pillows no less. Normally it would have been terrifying to see the beasts of such behemoth proportions, but to physically appearing 13-year-old, it was a sight that was completely natural and to an extent therapeutic for him. "Boy," said a gruff voice, as the boy's blue eyes traveled upwards to see the speaker's face. It was a kitsune with 9 long swiping tails. His size roughly equaled the Hokage rock that the boy used to paint for shits and giggles. Its pupil alone was bigger than a tall full-grown human was. Red-orange fur covered its body with black fur around its eyes that stretched to its ears, redder eyes with black slits for pupils, and the upper body structure of a human, complete with opposable thumbs on its clawed hands. "What did you sneeze all of a sudden for, idiot?" the fox asked, and the boy's eyebrow twitched strongly, almost violently. Then looking up at the giant beast he gave his response, the most apt one he could think of. "Shut up, you fucking asshole." The teen yelled at the fox with bunny-like ears. Now he would have mentioned the bunny ears, but the kitsune did not like it. Naru-chan gets frustrated quite easily, doesn't he? The two-tailed back in echo, completely engulfed in cobalt blue and black flames said. It also had a right yellow eye and a left green eye. It looked at the boy who twitched at her words. Only one person had previously called him Naru-chan and got away with it, now it was 2. Why couldn't the tailed beasts not eat away at his sanity? At least the other 4 were asleep, now if they woke up with the exception of Asobu, it would be a real massacre. Maybe it's because he's a child again, the white horse-like creature with a dolphin's head spoke in a polite way. It has 2 pointed long horns and 3 shorter horns on the front of its head. The ends of its horns, hooves and tails were tanned, with some of the same colored spots before the tan areas of its horns and hooves. It also has red markings under its dark blue-green eyes. "Hakuo," the teen said with a groan. "You're supposed to be on my side, not antagonize me." "Don't worry, Naruto. Lucky 7 Chime will always have your back." The blue-armored Kabutomashi spoke with an excited tone. 6 of its 7 tails resembling green insect wings, along with an actual 7th tail, all grew from the end of its abdomen. The stem of the tail was green, but the wings were orange, something the boy cheered with all his might. A helmet-like skull covered its eyes, from inside of which, an orange glow could be seen. It also had spike protrusions on its shoulders and a row of slits on each shoulder, and 6 legs, 3 on each side. The legs are also covered by the blue armor, with the exception of extreme ends, which were green in color. It had 2 pincers with 3 parts on its face, covering a mouth full of sharp teeth. On its back behind its head, it has a large 2-section horn protrusion. "Jime, I love you. You know that, right?" Naruto said, and his 13-year-old body ran towards the Nanabe in slow, agonizing motion that irritated the kitsune to no bounds. However, before they could embrace each other out of camaraderie another voice stopped them. "Make them stop, Kurama. I'll keep Shorty on the shit list for a month," said an Ushi Oni with 4 long horns on its head, similar to that of a Jacob sheep. It was extremely massive, dwarfing entire forests and towers over large rock formations and buildings. Its height was only surpassed by the kitsune. It had a muscular upper body structure, with a hunched back similar to a bison, arms with spiked protrusions on the elbows, and hands with opposable thumbs like that of a human. Instead of hind legs, its lower half consists of its 8 tails, which resemble the cephalopod arms of an octopus. Upon hearing the words, the kitsune smiled. He smiled as if all the happiness of the world had been thrust onto him. Its 9 large tails swooped in and brought the teen closer to his face and looked at him with a scrutinizing stare. "Naruto, Kurama," the Kyuubi no Kitsune spoke with a tone as if he was scolding a child. Naruto Uzumaki was no child and he would be damned if he let Fuzzball get away with this. "What's wrong?" The sudden question came from Kurama, and all the previous outrageous thoughts of insulting the fox's ears, his shampooed fur and ability of not being able to take a dump in his mind disappeared. The teen sighed out of frustration. "It's nothing," he lied, and judging by the stink eye the kitsune gave him, he knew there was no use in continuing on the charade. "Fine, it's just I'm a bit bored and this de-aging thing is getting to me." "Well, you were a much louder and impatient brat at this age, so I'm not surprised you're acting like that again," Kurama said sagely and put Naruto down, who was merely sitting down on the grassy surface of his mindscape. Apparently, he could change it to his will, and Fuzzy never told him about it. Ungrateful kitsune and his smartest retorts. "How far is the seal coming along?" Jayuki, the 8 tails or 8-0 as B used to call him asked. "Well, it should take a month or 2. Depends on how much I can use the Rin Sharingan to adjust the bodies," the blonde-haired boy replied and scratched his chin in a thoughtful manner. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Matatabi, the blue flame-clad Bakaneko asked. She was looking at him with worry in her 2 dual-colored eyes. "Don't worry about it, Matatabi. From what Kurama and all of you told me, I will able to survive and still have most of my strength. Guess all that stored-up chakra that bitch left behind will be of some use," Naruto said, and the Bijuu did not miss the hatred in his voice when he talked about Kagaya. They were not surprised, nor did they tell him anything about it. Kagaya Otsutsuki, the rabbit goddess, had done something that left Naruto with little to no choice. After receiving the power from the Sage of Six Paths, both Naruto and Sasuke had engaged her in battle across her various shifting dimensions, with Kakashi, Sakura, and Obito in tow. However, the progenitor of chakra had done something none of them saw coming. Madara had previously mentioned that the Shinju tree was absorbing chakra far too rapidly after the infinite Tsukiyomi had been initiated, and it seemed that Kagaya had transferred all of the chakra, yes, all of the chakra of the people trapped inside the illusion into her dimension, creating a secondary tree for power. To make sure that her opponents were emotionally weak, she had used the expansive truth-seeking ball after she traveled back to their world of the elemental nations. Had it not been for Obito's Kamui ability that was enhanced by the residual Six Paths power, they too would have been completely atomized out of existence. The world of the shinobi was completely gone, and the 5 remaining survivors were in Kagaya's Genesis dimension, where the second tree resided. Naruto and Sasuke had tried to cut the tree, despite the shocking event that had transpired, but Kagaya returned and was fighting them full on. However, Kagaya was just too strong, and to taunt the 2 reincarnations of the sage's sons further, she demonstrated her cruelty once more. Sakura Haruno was dead, stabbed with the all-killing ash bones. Naruto had to watch how the girl he grew up with and was teammates crumble into ash before disappearing into dust. Kakashi had also been killed, albeit in a much more different way, when the rabbit goddess snapped his neck with ease. Obito died when he was hit with the same sure kill technique that ended Sakura's life. However, Obito, with the remaining powers he retained from being the Juubi Jinchuriki, had held on for a moment longer. Just long enough so that he could permanently transfer his ninjutsu to Naruto. With the Kamui by his side, the battle had taken a better turn, and Naruto along with Sasuke were overpowering her, even managing to rip one of Kagaya's arms off. However, Zetsu was in that arm and was patiently waiting for a moment to strike. When Naruto used his multiple-tailed beast Rasen Shuriken to hit Kagaya, making her take on an unstable form that looked like mix between a rabbit and all the other Biju, that was the moment Zetsu decided to strike. A few of those accursed all-killing ash bones had been launched from the torn arm, and Naruto not only had to dodge those, but get rid of the ones that were aimed at Sasuke as well. Seeing that Zetsu would strike again, the Jinchuriki went straight to kill it, and he tore Zetsu apart with his truth-seeking orbs. That was one of his biggest mistakes, as Kagaya had chosen that moment and struck Sasuke with her Kekame-ra Taijutsu attack. This made of pure chakra struck the last Uchiha and had all but spelled his death. However, Sasuke Uchiha was never one to go down, and using the last of his chakra, he conjured his Susanoo, and with a great sword made of lightning, he slashed her Byakugan eyes out and cutting his own lower half in the process. Sasuke Uchiha fell as the rabbit goddess howled in pain. The Jinchuriki could still remember how Sasuke was contently smiling at how he blinded the first Byakugan user. He then looked at Naruto and told him what he needed to hear. "Finish her." The words triggered a raging storm inside the blonde teen, and after properly sealing up Sasuke's body in a stasis seal he had on his body, along with several other scrolls, he rushed at Goddess. He was sure that his fist had broken at least 3 of her teeth, and she tried to escape to another realm to recover first. She had lost an arm, 2 of her all-seeing eyes, and the hatred she felt was enough to make her take some time out to regenerate properly. Of course, she had not expected Naruto's Manjukum Sharingan to evolve into the Rinnegan in such a short moment. The Bijuu's chakra made sure it mutated that fast. As she made a rift to escape, Naruto had rushed in there into the void with her and stabbed her with a sword made out of the truth-seeking orbs. Something went wrong as she tried to escape into another void under the duress of such pain, and sooner than he thought Naruto had ended up in a strange dimension with the rabbit goddess. He saw how Kagaya lost control over her mind with unbridled rage and took her primordial beast form. Naruto would have taken her on again, but he needed to catch his breath, and help came in the form of a giant creature he never thought he would see. The big-ass red dragon, as Son Goku had called it, had bought them the time it needed. Though even Kurama noted that the dragon, as hard as it was for them to believe that something like that existed, was extremely strong considering the rate at which it healed and was striking the Juubi with enough force to destroy hidden villages. However, the Juubi was slowly outmaneuvering it, and during that time, Naruto, or rather his clones, would gather large amounts of natural energy. Therein lied the problem. Apparently Naruto and Kurama were pulling in more than just natural energy. Some strange form of foreign energy source was being utilized in their chakra system and would have devastating consequences. Despite the warnings, Naruto told Kurama to gather as much as he could, for he wanted to stop the Juubi necessary. When the amount of overwhelming energy had gathered, Naruto faced the Juubi and hit it with the most powerful techniques he had. He, Kurama and the other tailed beasts were surprised at just how much destruction the new added energy had caused. However, Naruto could feel growing weaker and his body was reacting strangely to all that energy. Seeing no choice, Naruto asked Kurama the hand seals to the Shiki Fujin, as Kurama had a ridiculous amount of knowledge on Fuinjutsu, having spent more than a total of 50 years in 2 Uzumaki Jinchuriki, who were forefront experts on the art of sealing. He summoned the god of death and willingly sealed the Juubi into himself. There would be no further chaos by Kagaya or her power, and he could finally rest. However, fate seemed to have played a cruel joke on him. He woke up to find himself in a hospital in some damned place called Tokyo. At least they spoke the same language as him. Otherwise, he would have blown a fuse. All the 9-tailed beasts were inside him as well. They had been restored inside him and informed Naruto that he was now more or less the new Jinchuriki of all the 9 Biju. He searched for Kagaya in his mindscape but did not find her. Not even a trace was left, and the Biju informed him that when he performed the Shiki Fujin he summoned something far more powerful than the Shinigami. Kurama himself was a witness to that jutsu before. How he was alive was something that escaped their knowledge because Naruto did almost die for a few seconds, and when they regained consciousness the first and last words they heard before Naruto was thrown into this world was, "Grow stronger, Naruto Uzumaki. You and I have an unfinished battle to fight." After learning that, Naruto had fallen into depression, severe depression where thoughts of suicide had crossed his mind far too many times. If the Biju were not there, if they had not consoled him in that dark hour, he was sure he would have searched for a way to die. He had asked them desperately if he even had a purpose anymore, and reluctantly they revealed a few secrets to him. Secrets that they, Kagaya and Sennin knew, but never resorted to use that knowledge. Apparently if Naruto did do those things, he would be breaking every rule known to men and gods of his world. Naruto had replied that his world was gone, and with the knowledge they had Naruto had made his plans. First, his body had de-aged and by quite a ridiculous extent. He was about as old as he was when he fought Niji in the Chunin exams. Thankfully, though, he was not as weak as he was back then. He could access the Sharingan and had his Sage mode, which he could enter immediately. The Manjukum Sharingan was also something he could use, as he had extracted a large amount of information from the minds of the nurses and doctors who healed him in the hospital. He had to give kudos to Obito's ability, shame he could not save the redeemed Uchiha. However, anything beyond that stressed his coils, which the Biju had readjusted due to how the strange energy had de-aged him. He could use the Rin Sharingan which manifested in both of his eyes, but it caused him extreme pain, and he had to travel to his Genesis dimension to keep himself stable, and that place was his workshop. Apparently, it would take some time before he could use Kurama's Chakra mode, the Rinnegan, Six-Path Sage mode or even as the Six-Paths God mode, as the Biju labeled it, outside of the Genesis dimension. Then there was the stupid mark on his back, apparently it had a strange foreign energy like the one the Red Dragon possessed. However, he couldn't use it, but there was energy inside the mark air seal as the Biju called it. Naruto wished his problems had ended there, but sadly it didn't. This world was different from his. This world had something his didn't. Peace. Although it had its fair share of bloody conflicts, it paled in comparison to the shinobi system his world had, and technologically this world had far surpassed his. While the humans of this world were significantly weaker and didn't have an ounce of chakra in them, their minds were that much more complex. Flying ships called airplanes carried people to distant lands at high speeds, machines known as cars were used for everyday transportation, and handheld devices known as cell phones, or the new breed of smartphones, allowing people to communicate with each other from end of the world to another. All of these things fascinated. People lived diverse lifestyles, aspired to have different occupations that ranged from being celebrities to well-renowned scientists. It was everything the blonde had dreamed of, a dream left to him by his perverted master. Seeing and living in such a peaceful setting made Naruto realize just how beautiful peace was, and he was slowly starting to fall in love with it. Even though this world had its fair share of problems, peace was more or less global. Then the perfect image of the world became stained with beings who were different from normal human beings. After getting out of the hospital, while still under duress of losing his world, Naruto had seen beings with black feathery wings kill humans with weapons apparently made of light. Not being the fool he was during his younger days, he quietly used stealth and observed them. Apparently they were members of something called Grindelwald or something, he still had no clue what it was, and they answered to someone named Kakashizal or something. In his defense, it was dark, they spoke in a hush-hush manner, and he was in a downed mood, too depressed to care. He did not see those beings again, but felt several different sorts of energy roaming around in Tokyo within a few hours. It didn't take a genius to figure out that his apparent battle with the Juubi and subsequent appearance through a giant hole in the sky, as the Biju told him, must have caught their attention. Planning to get out of Tokyo, he stole money off of a few thugs and ruffians who had no better purpose and headed for a place he thought would be inconspicuous. Kuo Town, it was still a relatively new location in Japan and by its reputation, a very boring place, aka a very normal place. He had moved here 6 months ago, 4 months later his depression was slowly fading, and 2 months ago after getting a fruitful result in the Genesis dimension, Naruto Uzumaki succeeded in his first act. Kakashi Haddock had been brought back to life and was made stronger than ever, courtesy of a few experiments he ran on him with the mental assistance of the Biju. The process he would have to repeat, and despite the initial rambling that his sensei did in favor of him staying dead, Naruto simply replied he didn't want to be the last shinobi. That statement alone shut his quirky sensei up, and after learning everything from his once overly hyperactive student the copy ninja sighed. Now here they were in world filled with a futuristic setting in accordance to their world standards and supernatural beings with black feathers. Initially Naruto thought Kuo would be free, but he began to feel other sources of beings in the area. It was stranger than those feathered ones, but tonight the feeling had been more intense. There was a dark and heavy energy he sometimes felt around Kuo, and a surprisingly lighter and warmer energy. To put it bluntly, his sensei went out for a walk on the road of life. That meant he was going to be late, and if Naruto's luck had anything to say about it, Kakashi Haddock would no doubt somehow get into some sort of incident. "Aka. Listen to when I speak to you," roared the giant kitsune as Naruto broke out of his thoughts. "Huh?" he said as his blue eyes gazed at Kurama who seemed annoyed if not anything else. Then again he did seem annoyed most of the time, well, unless he was making Shukaku feel insecure about his height and overall lack of 8 lesser tails. "I swear to Rakuto Oji, this kid is going to be the death of me," Kurama said as he palmed his face, and the other Biju, sleeping ones withstanding, shook their heads at the kitsune's behavior. To the blonde, the Biju were like a family, a highly destructive family, but a family nonetheless, and the past 6 months only made him grow closer to them. "Sure, Kurama," Naruto said with a smile on his face, and looked at all of them as he stretched. "So you guys want to watch an anime or something?" Naruto Uzumaki over the last months had discovered the joy known as anime. Oh how he loved animation made by Japan. He was glad he ended up in country that not only made anime, but also had the greatest food on the planet in different flavors. Ramen, the greatest gift mankind could ever receive. The Biju also seemed to have a fascination towards anime, but Kurama liked to scoff at how he could crush all those fictional characters alone. "Ooh, will we be watching that Hunter thing?" Chimei said with a squeal of excitement. "But we still haven't finished Gurren Lagann yet," Kakuo added. Yeah, he was overly polite like that. Now, if only had taken Naruto's side in the argument previously. "Stop acting like children. You'll wake the others up," Jayuki said to his siblings, and the 5 tails and 7 tails seemed sad. The being nicknamed Ado then turned towards Naruto and spoke, "I think I speak for all of us when I say that we need to re-watch Cowboy Bebop." "Oh no you don't. Let's watch Black Cat," Matatabi said as she hissed at Jayuki who glared at her. "All of you are acting like idiots," Kurama said as he hit them all with his tails. He then crossed his arms as he spoke, "It's clear as day that we should all embrace our eyes with the perfection known as Yu Yu Hakusho." "Oh yeah, we all know why you want to watch the Kurama Nai," Chimei said, and soon enough all the other Biju who were awake were beginning to argue with the kitsune. Naruto for his part merely sighed with a deadpan expression. "Yup, they were a family alright. You guys decide on a show, I'm going to go and have some ramen," he said as he concentrated and closed his eyes. Their words of petty argument and favorite characters being better than the others were the last words he heard before disappearing from his mindscape. Blue eyes slowly opened as the young teen slowly raised his head from the wooden table. He had fallen asleep quite some time ago, if the wristwatch was telling the truth. Looking around, Naruto saw that dining room of the apartment was the same as he left. It seemed his sensei still had not returned, probably a black cat or something. Naruto's apartment, while not overly expensive, was actually a huge step up for him. Money wasn't an issue as he learned, he simply sold gold, silver, and other jewels to shops in Kuo Town under his henj identity of Arashi Kazama. Where did it all come from? Why, simple. The creation of all things. He activated his Rin Sharingan, which caused no small amount of pain, to go to the Genesis dimension and create endless amounts of riches. Naruto Uzumaki was loaded, and after a thorough verbal lashing from the Biju, he toned down his intake of ramen from 38 bowls a day to 9. To go below 9 bowls of ramen a day was torture, and he'd rather fight Kagaya again than bear such a pain. Heading back to the apartment, it was modest and he got a good deal out of it. Previously he had been staying at a hotel, but after Kakashi Haddock came back to the world of the living they had to get an apartment. After lots of house hunting, subtle threats to make sure they didn't get ripped off, they found a perfect 3-bedroom apartment. Life was good, but his sensei still wasn't here. He wasn't that worried about the copy ninja though. During the war, Sasuke had taken a large collection of Sharingan eyes stored in jars from a base of Abitos. Those eyes were still with Sasuke in the forms of body seals. Naruto had merely taken a pair and made some adjustments to Kakashi's body where he could naturally use the Sharingan like a true Uchiha. Of course Kakashi's overall strength, durability, and chakra reserves had been increased too. It was a forbidden process, but Naruto Uzumaki never was one for rules and regulations. Seriously, he stole the scroll of sealing on his graduation night, granted it was through deception of another, but the orange-loving boy did enjoy the thrill. Right now he was in his home attire, a simple orange shirt and beige pants. He wore no sandals at home, he didn't care, and Kurama had the gall to say he was ripping off L's look. Please, as if he was some fictional character in a manga or an anime. Now stretching his limbs, Naruto Uzumaki would go and have his instant ramen. Though it was not as good as old man Tucci's ramen, bless his soul, it was good enough, and ramen was something he would never turn his back on. However, he was denied that chance as he felt a clicking noise. The main door to the apartment had been opened, and Naruto felt the presence of another person with his sensei. He was concerned, mostly because the person who came with his sensei had that dark and heavy energy signature that he avoided. Not because he was afraid, no. It was simply better to avoid an unknown enemy, learn about them, and then proceed to beat them, if needs be kill them if the situation calls for it. Besides, attacking Naruto in the house was virtually suicide. The house was guarded by seals that Kurama helped him engineer and draw to protect the house. Nobody could teleport in the house, nobody could break in through the door, and if someone did manage to break through the door, a very unpleasant space-time seal would send them to a very unpleasant place. If they still got past that, well, a certain ramen enthusiast was still there to face. Going to the living room, Naruto saw his lanky sensei come in the house wearing the same attire he had been. A white full-sleeved shirt and black pants. The copy ninja still had not gotten to shoes, Tola sandals were his thing apparently. Surprisingly however, his sensei was wearing the iconic mask again. Yes, Naruto's dream of seeing his sensei's face had come true, and the Jinchuriki realized why his sensei did it in the first place. Kakashi had a face that rivaled Itachi Uchiha in terms of pure manly handsomeness. He even had a beauty mark on his face, and the scar made him look that much better. The mask must have been a precaution to ward off rabid fangirls. Shifting his eyes away from his sensei who seemed to be looking at Naruto with a somewhat serious expression on his face, the Jinchuriki observed the guest that had come into his house. It was a woman, she had grey hair tied into a loose bun and equally exotic grey eyes. Her face was, for the lack of a better word, beautiful in a bewitching manner. She wore what seemed like gown, and despite her more than eye-catching figure, the blood on her clothes raised a small number of alarms in his head. "Kurama, got anything on this?" Naruto said in his mind, just to be sure. Between him and the kitsune, Kurama was the better sensor of emotions. Hearing an annoyed grunt, the kitsune replied. "No, she's clean. No malice, ill intention or hatred. She's definitely no ordinary human. Though she is afraid, to a great degree, no less," Kurama replied from inside his mind. I see. Naruto formed the words in his mind and he was thinking on how to handle this. Paranoia was slowly starting to seep up, but Kurama's next words changed the game entirely. "Oh, and I think she's pregnant. I feel another life source inside her," the kitsune quickly said before disappearing back into his mind without providing any sort of advice on how to handle this. The Biju must be having some conversation if it was enough for the fuzzball to ditch him like this. He'd torture Kurama in his mind later, but first he had to address the elephant, air woman in the room. He needed to do this in a subtle way so as to not incite any hostile reaction from her. "Sensei," the young teen said, "are you kidnapping people now?" Naruto saw the woman's eyes widening a bit, no doubt out of surprise. Yup, Naruto Uzumaki was nothing if not out of the norm. Besides, being normal was overrated. Databeo. Ma, Naruto, the former Jounin of Konoha said while waving his hands lazily. "You know I'm not like that. Well, maybe when I was younger, but that was under orders. Besides, are you going to keep this injured woman standing?" "This. Hello," Naruto said as he excitedly waved his hand at her, seeing her look at him with that weird look in her eyes seemed perfectly normal. "Sorry for ignoring you, but please take a seat. Your wounds will be healed in a jiffy." Thank you," she said, and her voice was quite regal should Naruto say. If he was a betting man, which he wasn't but had a ridiculous amount of luck in, the woman probably came from some super rich family. As the trio walked towards the couch, the Jinchuriki decided to speak up. "Mind telling me what happened, sensei?" he asked his sensei older brother figure with a raised eyebrow. "Oh, you know, I was taking an enthusiastic walk on the road of life and reading my highly informative book," Kakashi began, and Naruto felt his eyebrow slowly begin to twitch. "Informative book, his ramen-loving ass. Then I noticed some men carrying guns and swords in the middle of the park. That's something you don't see every day, so I naturally decided to follow and find out what was going on," the silver-haired shinobi replied, and Naruto felt a headache slowly develop. It became a full-blown one when his sensei spoke again after the gray-haired woman sat down on the couch. They appeared to be members of the church, and they were hunting her down. "Excuse me?" Naruto said with an expression that effortlessly emphasized the term "Are you fucking serious?" He rubbed his forehead and coughed a bit before speaking. See, it was shit like this that he avoided his problems in Kuo. This lady was attacked by members of the church. The same people who spread the word and love of God, Jesus Christ and righteousness. The very same. I was a bit surprised too, but their golden crosses and general attires seemed to give off that vibe. Not to mention, the Kuo church was found abandoned and empty when I sent someone for recon, Kakashi said, and Naruto understood that his sensei's shadow clone must have gone to observe the church. His words only proceeded to hammer more nails in the coffin. Okay, what's with all the blood then? I mean, she has a limp, but the amount of smudge is excessive, he said, and saw that the woman decided to speak up. That would be the executor's blood who tried to kill me. Kakashi-san killed him before he could. She didn't finish her sentence, and Naruto could nod at her direction. He could understand the trauma she was going through. He then looked at his sensei. Did you clean it up? Used Jinjutsu on all of them. They'll think things have gone exactly according to their preferences. Are you sure, sensei? As sure as you loving ramen. That's pretty sure. I don't mean to be rude, the woman spoke up, her voice a bit shaky. But are you two magicians? Well, I don't know about magic, but we are pretty damn good, Dadabeo, he said with no small amount of pride, something the formerly one-eyed Jounin reciprocated by eye-smiling. Then he looked at the woman, and all the playfulness from Naruto's face was gone. Despite being a 13-year-old teen again, his face would morph into that of a hardened war veteran when he became serious. His blue eyes became narrow and icy as he leaked a small minuscule amount of killing intent just to set the tone. He really did not fancy taking chances with whatever was going on right now. Especially if the church, who he had an image of nothing but priests and nuns who spread the love of Christianity, were willing to kill a woman. A pregnant woman no less. It wasn't like she was a witch or something. Then again, she didn't feel human. "Ma'am, why were people from the church attacking you?" he asked, and the woman was slightly sweating. Naruto decreased the pressure a bit and she seemed to be a bit more relaxed. Perhaps he came on too strong. "It's because I'm a devil," she replied almost instantly. "What? Could you repeat that?" Naruto asked, not entirely believing his ears at what he heard. This woman was a devil. This beautiful woman who was afraid, nearly executed by the church and pregnant with an innocent child yet to be born was a devil. He looked at his sensei who lightly nodded. "It's true, bizarre as it may seem. Could you show him your wings?" Kakashi said as he looked at the gray-haired woman, who nodded. Two black leathery wings emerged out of her back and the blonde stared at the scene for a few seconds. His surprise was a bit under control, as Kakashi had been teaching him for the past 2 months, but more questions popped up in his mind. Questions that he needed answers to, and something that would take away his precious ramen time. However, needs must when the devil drives, and there was a literal devil in his house. "We'll talk about this later, first we need to heal you," Naruto said and saw Kakashi walking away. No doubt getting some medical equipment, he wondered if chakra treatment would work. Then he mentally slapped his face for not introducing himself. "Oh right. How stupid of me," he spoke with a smile on his face, his damn smile that wormed its way into people's hearts and made them connect with him. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, I never asked your name, Ms." The gray-haired woman looked at him, her eyes confused, slightly scared, but Naruto could feel that she was a tad less worried as she finally spoke, clearly Belial. What if Naruto truth-seeking orbs high school DxD, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.